Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's Cynthia and I'm joined by a very special guest. This is my husband, Tim, if you guys didn't know. In honor of Valentine's Day, we're doing a little relationship Q&A, and this is highly requested. I had so many of you guys asking me a ton of these questions, so I decided why not turn it into a YouTube video and answer all your questions. So I had you guys submit all your questions on my Instagram story, and I decided to bucket them all because there were a bunch of repeat questions. So the buckets are our story or relationship, dating, finances, and marriage. Okay, so this is the first section, which is about us, our story, and our relationship. So the first question is, it's kind of a three-part question, but how did you meet? How old were you? And what was your first impression of each other? When I met Tim, I was 25. What a baby. But I was about to turn 26. We met August of 2020, and my birthday's in September. So I was in my last month of being 25, and I swiped on him on Bumble. My first impression of him was amazing. I was like, this man's my husband. I love this guy.
Not on Bumble.
Oh, yeah.
When we first met.
After our first date, I went home. It was during COVID, so I was staying with my parents and my sister. And I went home and I told them, I'm like, I swear I just met my husband. So our first date was at this cafe in our hometown, and we just got coffee. But what I really liked about him was how nice he was to the cashier. When she was taking our order, he was like asking about her day and just being super friendly. And I just think that sort of openness and like friendliness was something I really liked. And he's very tall, which I really need because I'm very tall. I'm 5'9". So him being like 6'1" was great first impression. I know his first impression of me too, because when I was sitting there watching him and his first impression, I was like, oh shit, this is not going well. Because when we were talking, I was super engaged and he was like very leaned back, hands crossed, sunglasses on. And I was like, oh, okay. But then as our conversation progressed, then he started like leaning in and being more into it, which is now interesting now that I think about it, because you were so nice to the cashier. But then when it came to me, you were all like judgy.
Well, I think, okay, so
was that
my side of the story, I think we were on Bumble. We were just like chatting lightly, getting to know each other. And we eventually decided to meet in COVID. It was at the height of COVID, before vaccines. Everyone's wearing masks. This was like, think like when you're like wiping down your packages from Amazon type of COVID. And so we were trying to be very safe because we were both living with our parents, quarantining with our parents at the time, down in the South Bay, and didn't want to meet a stranger and, you know, everyone gets COVID. And so at that time we were trying to be very careful. So we did an outdoor date in a cafe, and then we went to a park. And yeah, I think at first, we all know Cynthia. She's very gregarious. She's very, some would say, potentially extra. And so when she's just diving into things, and mind you, I hadn't been on a lot of first dates, I guess, in a while. And then with it being COVID, it was also like just starting to just like re-socialize sort of thing. And so I definitely was a little bit like, whoa, what's going on? She's just going on and on and on about, all these things. And then, but the more I learned about her, the more, I think the thing that really started to hook my attention was she was talking about this like mentor group that she started, to help, like-minded, females and individuals sort of connect, and it was like a mentorship program for their careers.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's when I started to engage. And then from there, we went from a cafe to a park, and we actually sat on a park benches and talked for like 3 hours. Like it just flew by. And after that, I didn't go home and scream to my parents that I found my wife like Cynthia did when she got home that day after our date. But it was definitely positive, and we just, kept it going.
So did you have a negative first impression of me, and then it changed to positive?
No, it wasn't negative. It was just like,
you were still sussing me
yeah,
out.
I was like, yeah, kind of like just trying to figure you out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's also, I mean, he's so extroverted, so he's used to being the one talking. So I think maybe that also shocked you when you were like, whoa, she talks a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
What was your relationship like early on when you guys were dating? I think it was really cute and kind of wholesome. I think because, like Tim said, when we started dating, it was the thick of COVID. So there really wasn't much open, and we had to get really creative with our date ideas. So we did a San Francisco date. So he drove us up and we walked around
Land's End.
Oh, Land's End. That's what it's called. And we did a little hike around there, got elephant sushi, and then hung out and then drove back down to South Bay. And then we did a date at Filoli Gardens, many dates at Meat Fresh or Somi Somi at Main Street, Cupertino. So it was just very wholesome. And since we were both living with our parents, and again, because of the COVID thing, we were just trying to be really careful. So I think early on it was really wholesome, and it was great because I think it was a really good foundation for like a marriage, right? Like you really get to know the person and like talk about really deep things and things that you value and care about and suss the other person out. Versus I think in the normal world, it's really easy to like, you know, go out to dinners, go to bars, and you enjoy that person's company more so than really getting to know like their values as a person and whether you'd be a good fit for marriage.
That it was interesting because you had to already be very selective on who you met at all. And so I think going on a first date and second date and so forth, it was already a high bar. But then from there was also not a lot of people that we were going around to see. Like nowadays, back in our normal lives, it's just like we see so many people and we're constantly doing things on the move, going to events, you know, hang out with friends, and like there's just a lot of noise. But back then there was almost like no noise. It's like we set a date and then we just do it, and then we enjoy each other's company, and then we go home, and then the next week we see each other again and then we set a date. It was almost like old school in that way. So we got to know each other really well, fast, like Cynthia said. And then, you know, within like a few months, like back in November and December of 2020, we were moving back to San Francisco essentially at the same time. And then from there, while the city was still mainly shut down, we were seeing each other and only each other for like days and weeks at a time. You know, she would come over, we had separate apartments back then, but she would come over, and then essentially slowly it's like I had given her like one drawer, and then she filled it up with a bunch of clothes when she stayed over, and then like there was another drawer that then all of a sudden filled up with her clothes, and then like then there was a whole closet, and then before you knew it, it was just like a complete takeover within a month. It was pretty smart of her. Kind of how it happened, and it was very natural, and it was very focused on just each other, which I think, you know, it's good to build a foundation for a marriage, like Cynthia said, but it's also like at that time too, it's also like, you know, you find out very quickly whether or not a person is right for you or not, because that's all you're focused on besides work and spending time with your family back during COVID.
Did you know he or she was the one, how, and when? I knew pretty much like first date. No, I mean, yeah, kind of.
But I
think Tim left such a good first impression on me, and I had gone on a few more dates with other people. and
same here.
After I met Tim, every other date that I went on with someone who wasn't Tim, like Tim became the benchmark. So I realized when I was hanging out with other people that time would, like it, we would have our date and then I'd be ready to go home. Like be like, okay, it's time. And then when I was on these other dates, I would start thinking about like, oh, I wish I was on a date with Tim. And every time we went on a date together, I would be so giddy leading up to it. I'd be so excited. And then I'd get in his car and then we'd go somewhere. And I just felt like time just flew by. Like we could hang out for like 8 hours. And it felt like I still wanted to hang out with him more. And it just felt so natural and right. So I think probably by like the second or third date, I pretty much knew like this is, at least this for sure is the guy I want to be like boyfriend, girlfriend
Serious
with.
with,
Yeah,
yeah.
serious with. I think once we moved back to San Francisco together and I essentially was living at his place,
Taking over drawer by drawer.
you just pick up on things like when you're with someone every single day, every single moment, you just like know, right? So I think the fact that we got along so easily and like we just never really fought and like we would laugh to the point where literally such big laughs that just felt so special to me. So that's how I knew.
Mine wasn't that
It took him longer.
quick. It wasn't on the second or third date, but I think having essentially transitioned back to San Francisco together from the South Bay, and then, you know, truly spending, and when we were like with each other, just us two in the city, and then seeing each other every day, and essentially living together like 3-4 months into knowing each other.
Yeah.
We spent our first Christmas together. We bought a small Christmas tree together. We decorated it. Like doing that day in and day out with somebody, even like, sure, 3 months time, but it's COVID time. So it's like, you know, like you get so much quality time with them. It was very fast that it was like, this was just more than a potential serious relationship, but this was a potential marriage, because I had also told my friends and family before, you know, when I started dating again, and I was telling people pretty openly, like, my next girlfriend is gonna be my wife, because there's like, that's what I was looking for, and also just to illustrate how high of a bar I wanted to set before I got into another serious relationship. And within 3 months, especially the time starting to live together and see each other every single day back in San Francisco when it was still pretty much shut down, like that's when I knew. When I asked her to be my girlfriend on December 12th, 2020, at the Christmas tree lot on the Embarcadero, I was already in my mind essentially asking her to be my wife. In my mind.
I'm getting all teary-eyed.
But yeah, that's when I knew.
Aww. Okay, last question in this section. What are common values you share, and how do you resolve conflicts? We actually share a lot of values. I feel like we can't, it's hard to list them out, but like, I think we grew up in culturally very similar households.
Very similar.
Yeah. So even though there's like differences, like he played sports, but I didn't, or,
I think at home you guys spoke a lot more Chinese than
that's
we
true.
did.
Everything else, like some of the things that like his mom would say to him, my mom said to me growing up. The way we think about like family, ambition, career, friendships,
We're both
loyalty.
We're both also the older siblings in our family, so we both have a younger sibling of the same gender, actually. So I have a younger brother and she has a younger sister.
Yeah.
I think that also put us in a lot of very similar life situations too.
That's true.
Just in terms of like being that role.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that.
Our younger siblings would have a lot to say about that. If you guys want to see a sibling Q&A,
Yeah.
that could be an interesting one.
Share a lot of values to the point where, you know, and Cynthia, I mean, it became this like TikTok trend recently or something about invisible string.
Yeah.
So like she
good
always had,
memory.
even when we were starting to date early on, it was like a lot of things were not even have to be said. Like it was just alignment on, you know, culture stuff, but then it's also like, what do we want to eat? Like, how do we want to spend our time, and how we saw our place in society, how we valued hard work. And the last part is, how do you resolve conflicts? You just talk about it.
Yeah.
And we both kind of have this tendency, like when we both get a little upset at each other, we kind of try to like just clam up a little bit, and then the other person kind of knows the other person something's not right, but then it's like not sure if it's not right because. And so what we try to do for both of us is like we try to just like address it and not necessarily confront, like have a confrontation, but like we need to confront like the issue at hand.
I think just communicate. And I think because both of us are like extroverted people, we need to like talk about our feelings, and we're both pretty obvious when we're not feeling right. So, and we can like feel that. We just get each other. So when he's off, I feel like something is off. So whether he directly approaches me to talk about it or I'm like, wait, what's wrong? We just end up having a convo because we just sense it, you know?
But I do also think since we have so much natural alignment that it actually sometimes is...
I already know what he's saying.
It feels unnatural or it feels like very, very like strange or weird when like
we're not.
She doesn't feel like I'm on the same page as her, or I don't, or vice versa. And so sometimes that makes it, when that does happen, that makes it even more confusing and frustrating for each other because like we already have so much natural alignment. We're almost, I guess, a little spoiled in the way that we're not used to having conflict and we're not used to having disagreements or misalignment. And so that makes it even more important that when it actually happens to be like, this is like what I feel or a certain situation, and like having that extra communication. Dating.
That's the next section. Okay, first question. What was your experience like dating in your 20s? Any advice? Me, I would say in general, I'm pretty positive when it comes to like dating and using dating apps. I think that's because I'm naturally extroverted. So I think for me, whenever I was going on a date, I was like, oh, great. Like, get to meet another person, whether it goes well or it doesn't, whether we vibe or not. At least I got to meet a new person and enjoy dinner. And even if it was like weird or like awkward, at least it was like, you know, like an interesting story to tell my friends, you know?
So you really leaned into it.
Yeah, I think
like you were unafraid to put yourself out there.
Yeah, there was a point where I was really frustrated because all the guys I was saying, nobody was really the right fit. And it also made me kind of upset when, you know, there's like F-boys and you kind of know they have a ranking and you're not their number one and they kind of play with your emotions. So it just feels like it takes a toll on your own self-confidence, or it takes a toll on like your trust that there is the right person out there. But I think after meeting Tim, now I always tell all my friends and now you guys that like your soulmate is out there. Trust the process, believe that your person is out there, and it will happen for you.
Yeah, that's very true. What was my experience dating like in my 20s? I didn't have much experience dating in my 20s. I was actually in a fairly long-term relationship right out of college for a long, long time. And it ended right before, or right around like the start of COVID, right before, honestly. I don't have a lot of like, put yourself out there sort of that type of advice, but I do really resonate with, even though Cynthia essentially ran her own version of The Bachelorette, and I was, you know, mainly just with one person that entire time. I do agree with what she's saying is like, you know, whether you're putting yourself out there or you're just waiting for the person, like there is a person out there for you for sure. And yeah, you will probably be better served if you just boldly go into that endeavor.
The other thing too is I know swiping on the apps can be really disappointing, especially as you're swiping, you're like, oh my God, why am I seeing the same people or like nobody that I like? But just know, like, it's all about timing. This guy literally got on the apps and then I swiped on him and then pretty much took him off the apps. So just have hope that that person is out there, and when the timing is right, just like the invisible string theory, the universe will put that person in your life and they'll appear on your apps.
And believe that.
Yeah.
Believe that. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're the one getting snatched off the apps, you know, even though you've only been there for maybe a month or so, after having never been there before, if it feels right, just go with your gut. There's no like, oh man, like I'm single, like let me just try my hand at the field and like, you know, I can keep Cynthia warm, but maybe, you know, date like these 20 other girls.
That's what the F-boys did.
But like if I had done that, I would have been making the biggest mistake of my life. And I'm glad I didn't. Even though part of me was like, oh, I just got on the apps, like, there could be
like what else is
there
out
could
there,
be more out there. I just don't know if I can meet such a great girl in the first month. Like, who knows what I might meet or who I might meet in a year. But like, I don't think that logic really, like, it makes sense logically, but I don't think it actually works in real life, because while we think that there is a person out there for you, I don't think there are that many people out there for you. So when you actually find one, or find one that's promising, that's when you kind of just lean in all the way.
Yeah, but you also want to find a guy who has that sort of mindset, right? Because I think some of the F-boys that I was mentioning earlier, like, that is not the way they think. And so being able to find a genuine person like you is really special.
But then I don't think those people are ready to be in that position. So then I think the girls should just realize that too.
Yes. That's another good point, is figuring out, like, what are things you really care about. This actually leads us into the next question. What are your non-negotiables, and what are you looking for out of the relationship? I always knew, like, I was looking for something serious, ideally something to turn into marriage, because I hate, like, breakups, and it just makes me really sad. No matter, like, whether you're the right fit with the person, you grow to really enjoy that person's company and to be used to having someone around you. So it's always sad when you go through a breakup. And so for me, I never wanted to waste that sort of time and energy on someone that I don't think could be my husband. And yeah, so I think I was pretty bold early on in my dates. I would always, ask, like, oh, what are you looking for? And if the guy was, like, kind of sus about it, or like, oh, I'm just looking to date casually or something, then I wouldn't even, I wouldn't even go on a second date or third, because there's just no point, because you're just kind of putting yourself at risk of being heartbroken. And it's earlier to end things when you've only met someone once versus when you've, met that person, I don't know, for a couple months and hung out with them, started to grow memories and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I've had 2 other relationships before Tim, and after my last relationship, which was pretty toxic, there were a lot of things that you would think it's like common sense, like everyone should have, but that person unfortunately didn't. And so there were certain things that I jotted down in my journal that I was like, okay, these are things I really value in a person, like ambition, like loyalty, like honesty. Like, these sound like such basic things, but not every person has that. I just knew going into my next relationship after coming out of that one that these were, like, fundamental things that I wanted. Like, someone who was, like, very focused on their career, someone who was honest and loyal, close with their family. Someone who was, like, social, could get along with my family and friends. Someone who culturally understood me and my background. I think those are some of the non-negotiables that are top of mind for me. And then physically, like, I'm so tall, so I wanted someone who was, like, taller than me. What were your non-negotiables? Did you ever come up with a list?
No, but, like,
mentally in your
I feel like we kind of all have that sort of radar system. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, well, okay, that is, I mean, maybe people could just call it, like, a huge turnoff or something. Like, yeah. Or it's just like, so I think you have to have, like, just genuine and natural kindness. I think you have to have hard work and passion about whatever you do, because I think that's really sexy. Yeah, and same. Good relationship with family, a good relationship with your close friends, or also the types of friends that you have. I think that speaks a lot about the actual person. So as I get to know people, like, those are some things that, just off the top of my head, if that's not like a check, it's just like, what are you even doing? This
is kind of a 2-part question. So how do you go about discussing difficult topics like finances, and how do you deal with any differences? In my opinion, topics are only difficult if you're talking about it with the wrong person. Is that a really bold statement? In some of my past relationships, any topic, like talking about, finances, or going on vacation and the type of vacation we want,
anything, like, kind of sensitive.
Yeah, like, it could be triggering and trigger a fight. And then that's why it becomes a difficult conversation, because you're scared of how the other person will respond and the fight that will break out because of it. Ever since I met Tim, like, there are moments where, based on like my past trauma, I am about to bring something up to him and I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of scared. I don't know what like your reaction will be, especially earlier on in our relationship. But then he always reacted to it in such like an understanding and
like what?
Compassionate way. We were talking about going on vacation to Cabo again, and he was super busy and like in between calls and just like kind of stressed and frustrated. And I don't know why I like urgently wanted to ask you. And I think I thought to myself, like, should I bring it up now, or is this a bad time? Kind of like, I don't know, it could be a difficult topic to talk about right now, when just maybe not the right time. But then I asked him and he was like, he just answered my question, and there was no like hesitation, and there was no frustration at me. There was no like, why are you asking me when I'm like in the middle of a work day, I'm so busy, this and that. Like, it could have turned into something, but it was nothing, because he just has like empathy and compassion and love for me and patience. So I think with the right person, you should feel comfortable to talk about any difficult topic.
Yeah, and that comes with the alignment that we were talking about earlier.